Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1989. We're going to be taking a look at Stevie Ray Vaughan and he's going to be performing May I Have a Talk With You. So let's get Stevie and Double Trouble up on screen and see how they get on.
Talk with you. I wanna know will that true love see me through? Well, now tell me, darling, am I right, am I wrong? Yeah, now tell me, darling, am I right, am I wrong? I wanna know, little girl, you coming home? Come on home, baby.
I'm just going to jump in here because already there is so much to talk about, and this video, the link to it is going to be in the description below if you guys want to watch it the whole way through without me interrupting it. But the things that I want to bring up in this video are things that I might not have mentioned in the other videos that I have done on Stevie before, and I have spoken about the technique, the hammer-ons, the pull-offs, the alternate picking, the way that Stevie could throw together really fast passages, but then break that up with bends and slides and all of the technique elements. But the thing that interests me as well is the mental approach and the psychology of playing, because Stevie, like all of the top players, just seem to channel their expression through the guitar, and it doesn't seem like it's a subconscious thing. It's a consciousness that is flowing the whole time. So I'm going to be exploring that avenue with this particular video, but just to also relate it to everyone else who does play, because I've heard it a million times that some people will be playing a particular song or a particular solo, and they'll say to me, and I've had students like this who have said that they've mastered this solo in their room and they can play it at home 100 times in a row without fault. But then as soon as they get in front of people, they start messing it up and they don't understand why that is. And it's always the same reasons as to why that happens. More often than not, there is a thought process going on in the person's head that isn't present while they are playing at home, and they might be watching TV and just doing it all subconsciously, and they're not thinking about it. As soon as you're playing in front of people, you might now be analyzing your own playing almost from a third-person perspective. So now you're trying to imagine what people are thinking of your playing whilst you're playing, and that is always going to end in failure if you're worrying about what other people are thinking about your playing. Stevie is such a great example of someone who approached his playing mentally from the point of view of putting across his artistic expression, and there will be people watching this that'll be huge fans of Stevie's playing and love his sound, his tone, the way that he used those heavy gauge strings, so it sounded like he was wrestling with them. He had that aggression in there, and also detuning to E flat. These all are elements that make Stevie's playing unique from a tone and sound perspective, but his fingers are the things that really did the trick when it came to sounding like Stevie Ray Vaughan. So, having that in the equation, the playing is the thing that will make you sound like yourself. Stevie's another great example of this. When people who are fans watch him play and they'll say, how can anyone not be a fan of this? And believe it or not, there are people who do not like Stevie's playing. They'll say that he plays too much for the blues, it's too technical. And this is the thing about all of the top players and the top artists. Understand that you can never please everybody. You've just got to play your own way and play the way that you enjoy playing yourself. And that way, people will latch onto it and they'll enjoy your artistic expression because it is your own artistic expression. You're not trying to be another player. Another thing is that players will often think the audience is comparing their playing to somebody else, another guitarist. And more often than not, this is the guitarist that the player has in their head, and they're assuming that everyone in the audience knows this guitarist that they're thinking of, and then the guitarist thinks, oh, well, they're comparing me to this other guy who I think's really good. And a guitarist will always think about their own playing compared to their idol. And this is the thing that you've got to try and get that out of your head, because if you do have an idol and you want to sound like them, don't copy them. You can take them as an influence and work on their techniques and get them down on the fretboard, but then turn those techniques into your own expression, because otherwise you'll just be called a copycat and people will say, oh, he's great technically, but he just sounds like that other guy. Whereas you want to do what Stevie did, take on all of those influences and just put your own stamp on it. The ultimate goal of every guitarist is to be able to express themselves artistically through the instrument. And every guitarist around the world is constantly working at techniques and working at their playing with that goal in mind. So this is all Stevie Ray Vaughan did. He's working at these techniques so that he gets to a point where he can express himself, and he doesn't have to think about a technique. He just has to think about the expression. And that's something that I'm going to expand on in a minute. With that said, focusing the spotlight back on Stevie and Double Trouble. By the way, Tommy Shannon on bass. Listen out for some of those lines that he's laying down with Chris Layton on drums. A super tight rhythm section. If you've got a sub, turn it up to 11 just to appreciate some of this bass going on. But talking about Stevie and his mental approach to playing, because he's now, we understand, got that ability to express through his instrument because he's got the technical ability required in order to do that. He's practiced all of the techniques that I mentioned in all the other videos that I analyze here on the channel, but especially with the previous ones I've done of Stevie. So now that all of those techniques are subconscious for Stevie to play, it means that now he's thinking about the lines he wants to play and instantaneously playing that on the fretboard. It is like singing. And Stevie, again, another fantastic example of a player who had a fantastic voice. And his voice and his guitar were one, because when he did sing, he had almost that rasp and overdrive at will on his vocal cords so that he could get the same vocal sound that his guitar was getting. So we had the same voice. The other thing is that once Stevie was playing and had the technical ability to play whatever he wanted to, he can now sing through his guitar. A giveaway for this is to watch Stevie's mouth. When he is playing, he makes different shapes with his mouth when he's playing, especially in slower sections. And when he's playing one particular note over and over again, he won't make different shapes with his mouth. He'll keep the same expression with his mouth, like he's saying the same word over and over again. Of course, with music, there aren't any words, so the shape that the mouth takes on is totally random. And this is why you might watch some players who are even more animated than Stevie, and when they go off into a solo, their mouth and their face is all over the place because they're speaking that language of expression, But there aren't any words. They don't know what those words are. They just make faces to try and express whatever they're feeling as they're playing their guitar. You might have also noticed this with other top players. When they start playing with a wah-wah pedal, they start saying wah-wah with their mouth. They don't say it into the microphone, but they might be playing a solo and they are mirroring what they're doing with the wah-wah pedal with their mouth. And it is connected to the part of the brain that is to do with conversation. It is talking, and that is just the way that they're playing. You can see it with so many players. Look out for that now. If you don't play guitar, the amount of players that go wah-wah with their mouth when they're using a wah-wah pedal, but you can still look at Stevie here and the way that he's performing and going into a solo, the way that his mouth moves, because he is saying things through the guitar. It just so happens there aren't any words for what he's saying. They are feelings. Another thing that backs up the theory about being able to sing through the guitar is how consistent Stevie was live. How many videos have you seen where Stevie goes to play a solo and he messes up and forgets what he's doing? It never happened, because Stevie would never mess up singing. He wouldn't suddenly sing wrong notes outside of a scale. So why would he mess up playing these notes on the guitar if he is singing them through the instrument? And that goes for a lot of top players. You'll find that they make a lot of funny faces, but their mouths move when they play, and they never mess up or do something wrong live and go down a totally incorrect avenue, because when you're singing, you know what sounds good and what doesn't sound good, and you naturally know all of the notes that fit over the top of the chord that you're playing. A lot of the top players have that ability to play melodically as if they were singing, which is probably what is going on mentally with their approach to playing. They're just singing through the guitar. But other players who have sat down and rehearsed other people's lines and other people's licks, especially technically advanced guitarists who have sat down and worked at a particular run over and over and over and over again, can we, as humans speaking the language of music, tell the difference between someone who is playing pre-rehearsed lines and somebody who is actually singing through their instrument? And that, for me, is a massive thing that determines the popularity and the connection a guitarist gets with an audience, whether they're playing something they've pre-rehearsed and they're not thinking about, or they are playing something that they are consciously thinking of at that split second, and they are then communicating that to the audience. Just to quickly throw in a real-world example of that from a communication point of view, you might be watching a video on YouTube where somebody is reading from a screen off to the side of the camera what the video might be about, or the subject matter of that video. And you don't have a connection to that person because they're reading it off a screen. They're not telling it like a story because they know it. It's just being relayed to you, almost like a machine. Whereas when somebody's telling you a story and they were actually there, it is so much more engaging because they are expressing what they saw. They lived it. They were part of the story. They're not doing it from a third-person perspective and giving you the information from another source. They are the source. That's what it can feel like sometimes when somebody's playing particular lines on the guitar that somebody else came up with. It's like they're reading it from a screen to you. And somebody that is producing these lines consciously in that moment, you're hearing the story straight from them. And that's why it connects, because this is their artistry right in front of your eyes. There's no fakery here. But let's get back into the performance. And now you're probably going to be watching Stevie's mouth. You can rewind the video back to the beginning and just look at the way that he changes his expressions facially for what he's playing on the guitar. But we'll watch it till the end.
With you, I wanna know, little girl, you coming home? I love you, honey.
And there we have it. The thing is about Stevie's playing, I'm obviously a fan of Stevie, and the technique that is in there, it does fly under the radar, especially if you don't play guitar, because he throws it all together so well, and you hear the expression because all of that technique is subconscious, but the amount of technique that he has made subconscious is so impressive. A lot of people will say that during Stevie's solos, there were sections of pre-rehearsed subconscious muscle memory. And of course that is true. Every top player has that. In order to make a journey out of a guitar solo to keep it interesting, you'll have it in classical music all the time, where the string section will start playing a really fast arpeggio to increase the excitement, to elicit that reaction from the audience. It's exactly the same with a top instrumentalist. When they're playing a solo, they have these techniques that they will just dot into their solos to keep it interesting. But more often than not, the top players and the most successful and appealing players played consciously more than subconsciously. All you have to do is look at the top 100 guitarists of all time list, or even a list of the 10 most popular guitar players, to see that number one is not always the same guy because he was the fastest at playing and nobody can play faster, so he's number one. Those subconscious styles and subconscious ways of playing that are just muscle memory do not appeal to the masses, and they will never be number one on those lists. It's not as if every single player is trying to do one particular technique, and because they've mastered that technique, they are number one, they're the best. And as soon as somebody else masters that technique, they are joint first with the other guy who's mastered it. And this can be often the mental approach that people have to their playing. They think that they're not good unless they can do that technique that they are focusing on and they can't do yet. And so they put themselves down because they can't do that particular technique. But again, another newsflash, the person watching you in the audience doesn't even know what that technique is. All they want to do is hear your expression through the guitar. As I've already said, this video's probably got on for ages, but when you're watching a player like Stevie, he makes you think about all of these things because there is so much going on that once you scratch beneath the surface of the technical ability, you know that there's something more going on than just learning a line and playing it. And when I mention about singing through the guitar, you might say, what about those players who don't have the ability to sing? What are they doing? How are they connecting to an audience? And I will address everybody watching this video. Sing your favorite song in your head or think about it. And when I say sing, I don't mean literally sing it. I mean play it back in your head. If you're sat in a silent room and you think about your favorite song, listen to it in your mind. And I'm hoping that I'm not the only person that can do this, because whenever I'm thinking of one of my favorite songs, I'm listening to the actual track. I can hear all of the instruments. I can hear the vocalist. I can hear his expression and his vocal tone exactly as it is on the recording. But I'm not singing the song myself. I'm just hearing it in my head. So it means that if your brain can do that, if you get your technical ability up to a level where you don't have to think about it, you can start applying all of these ideas that allow you to think of your favorite songs and play them back faultlessly in your head. You've now got the ability to do that through the instrument. And that is how the top guitar players who can't sing access all of the musical ideas they've got in their head. They can't get their vocal cords to do it, but they can get this guitar to do it because they have mastered the technical ability needed on the instrument to then translate what they're thinking up here through the instrument to the audience. Just a final word on Stevie and his playing, because the other thing that strongly suggests to me that when he was playing, it was just a flow of consciousness through the guitar of his expression mentally, all the things that he was thinking of. In that split second were then translated through the guitar, and we then heard the result of that. The thing that strongly suggests that that was the case was when he does collaborations. All of the videos that you watch with him playing with other guitarists, and the way that Stevie changed the way he played. He changed the speed of his playing and the expression of his playing. It would have been impossible for Stevie to go away and learn all of the other lines that another guitarist might play and then replicate those while he played live with that other guitarist, and it just would have sounded like the same guitarist playing twice if he did that. Having the amount of technique Stevie did stored subconsciously is so impressive just in itself, but then to turn all of that subconscious ability into conscious expression is what makes him such an engaging player and a standalone player, because it just was Stevie's voice through that guitar. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!